Joining us right now, the man doing the questioning, Senator Ted Cruz. It's so good to see you, Senator. And there's so much I want to ask you. First off, though, I'm immediately going to just come right out of the gate with it. When was it that you developed magical powers to be able to control weather? And I'm just curious because you've been in the news a lot lately, just a little bit. We were struggling for topics today. And I was unaware that we could just put you atop the Millennial Tower in downtown Dallas and just have you extend your palms out and de-ice the state of Texas. Did not know that you had that ability. So why did you keep it from us, Senator?
Well, there are lots of magical abilities that I've collected over the years. You know, I will say to venture into practicing medicine that I actually want to diagnose the media. The media is suffering from acute Trump withdrawal, where for 4 years every day they could foam at the mouth and be obsessed with Donald Trump. And now that he has receded from their day-to-day storyline, they don't know what to do with themselves. So the media obsession with the fact that I took my family to the beach last week was a bit much. But, you know, look, it's
a bit much. It's a little. I just want to interrupt you, Senator, because if you were a state lawmaker, I would completely understand. I question some of the discussion of optics from conservatives who also champion small government, but yet want the optic of large government when it comes to state response to certain issues. But I would think less of you, I think, if you had not determined to go somewhere warm, because I wanted to go. And I say this as someone who had no power or water last week and whose college-age son had to be evacuated from his dorm room. I would have thought less of you.
Well, and I was trying to be a dad and take care of my family. And I think all of us across Texas were taking care of our families. On my part, it was dumb to do because it gave the knuckleheads ammunition to launch attacks and to engage in ridicule. But you know what? That's what they do, is they engage in attacks nonstop.
Right.
And my view is we need to be focusing on the real issues of substance. Number one, in Texas, you look at these storms we had. It is outrageous that the grid could not handle the demand, the need that we had in the state of Texas, that 4 million Texans lost power. Like you, I had no power, no hot water, no heat for about 2 days. And, you know, we spent the time, you know, shivering around the fireplace like an awful lot of Texans. And I think there are real questions that need an examination about why the grid was not prepared to handle that.
Let me jump in and ask you a question about
Yeah.
that, because there's a lot of discussion, and I know there's various fact checks going back and forth about this, that federal regulations somehow played a factor in this. And then everyone, of course, talks about the wind turbines and how we should have, instead of spending $20 billion for wind turbines, maybe beef up the existing infrastructure, insulate gas lines. I mean, what are your thoughts on some of these stories, and particularly the federal regulations specifically? Is any of that, is some of it true, or is it overblown, or is it much more nuanced than what we're looking at?
Look, probably all of the above, which is some of it's true, some of it's overblown, and it is certainly more nuanced than what we're looking at. And there's a little bit of a sort of political play acting going on where one side, you know, it's all being put within the framework of the Green New Deal. So if you're on the right, it's all the fault of wind and solar. If you're on the left, wind and solar had nothing to do with it. Right. They're magically perfect, and it must be coal and natural gas. I think we need to actually have a fact-based investigation based on substance to look at, okay, what happened when this demand surged? Listen, I think a lot of Texans are furious that we're the energy capital of the world, and the fact that we couldn't keep our lights on or our heat on with some winter snow and ice, but frankly, for much of the country, it wasn't even all that bad. But the Texas energy grid collapsed. That is unacceptable.
Yeah.
If you look at the breakdown of the Texas energy market, I'm a big believer when it comes to energy of all of the above, that we ought to be pursuing all of the different energy sources we have. I don't think we should have government mandates. I don't think we should have government subsidies. There's no doubt the federal government mandates have played a big part in the role that wind and solar play. Take a look at wind, for example. So Texas In any given year of our energy capacity, wind comprises about 25% of the energy capacity in Texas. Texas is the number one producer of wind energy in the entire country. We produce more than California, more than anywhere. But here's one of the problems with wind and solar in particular, which is that they have not proven to be consistent and steady and reliable. So even though it's 25% of the capacity in the summertime, wind drops to about 10 to 12% in the wintertime. And Monday night, right when this cold front and the snow and ice was hitting Texas, the wind turbines froze, and that dropped to 2% of the power output. That was an enormous challenge. Now, there were also problems with natural gas and coal. So we had to look at all of them. And I don't think we should look at it through a political lens. We ought to look at it through a lens of how do we fix this problem so it never happens again, and so we don't see 4 million Texans left without power and without heat.
Yeah, and there are discussions to be had too about cost effectiveness. I mean, I would be interested in hearing about the expense of, the carbon coated blades that prevent these things from freezing up in northern areas. But the thing is too, Senator, is that I keep hearing that this is a once in a lifetime storm that affected Texas. So it's like if a hurricane blows through Iowa. I mean, there are certain things that you're just not going to be able to predict, and you can prepare up to a point, and then afterwards it's all about moving to adapt and moving to contain, which of course that all gets lost in media headlines because they're really looking. I mean, Texas is very important to Democrats. And so, I mean, I read just one story in the New York Times about 4 days ago where Democrats were looking to seize upon these grid failures as a way to undercut Republicans where it concerns energy. But, correct me if I'm wrong on this, and we're talking with Senator Ted Cruz here. This is basically a micro look at the Green New Deal. And I would imagine the Green New Deal would have expanded the dependence that we had on alternative energies, which I also support, just like you. But I love having options as a capitalist and a consumer. But I also don't want to fund them in order for them to be successful. They need to just be able to walk into the private sector and compete. But I mean, why can't we have these? We should be able to have these discussions. Media should be facilitating this instead of, oh, well, look, Texas is a failed state now. We need people like Beto O'Rourke to be governor. We need these other Democrats to come in. And Senator Ted Cruz didn't use his heat ray hands and left his dog or something. I don't know. I mean, we can't have that because that's what they're focusing on.
Well, it's not heat ray hands. It's laser vision from my eyes. You got to get the superpower right.
I apologize. I will note that correction, Senator.
And look, as you're talking about the energy needs in the state of Texas, you're making far too much sense. You're being far too reasonable. They're going to revoke your card as a member of the media if you actually engage in logic and look to evidence. And there are a couple of points that are important to understand. Number one, Texas, so we have our own grid that is not part of the national grid. And one of the real virtues of it means the feds aren't actively regulating the day-to-day energy provision in the state of Texas. That benefits Texas consumers by driving down significantly the cost of energy. I was doing an interview with an ABC reporter who was pressing me on, well, shouldn't we spend absolutely whatever's necessary to make sure that power never shuts down again? And I said, well, hold on a second. There ought to be a reasonable cost benefit analysis. We need to make sure 4 million people don't lose their power. But if you ask Texans across the country, are you willing to double your electricity bill every month to decrease by 1% the chance of a power outage? I think most Texans would say no. One of the reasons people move from all over the country to Texas is because the cost of living is affordable, because you can afford to provide for your kids. You look at California energy costs are much, much higher. It's much harder for working men and women. So there needs to be a cost benefit analysis. Should we do more to strengthen resiliency in the grid? Absolutely. But it needs to also value keeping cost low and prices low for consumers. And there are a bunch of folks in the media and a bunch of folks that are Democrats that want to use this as an excuse to basically federalize the Texas energy grid and to drive costs through the ceiling. I think that would be a bad mistake. We got to balance, and Texans want an affordable cost of living so that we can provide for our family.
Amen to that. And we want to see a return for the investment of our dollars. If it's
Yeah.
stolen from us and we're forced to do this, Senator, and we're speaking with Senator Ted Cruz for those listening around the country. The simulcast is on the 1st. If maybe you shouldn't have left the state of Texas to go to a beach, you should have written an order to keep people in nursing homes during the height of a pandemic, and maybe that perhaps would have been more acceptable to legacy press. Which I want to ask you about this because you've called for a congressional probe into New York Governor Andrew Cuomo. You're getting all the fury that it seems that he should be receiving for the nursing home scandal in which one of his aides admitted on a call that, well, we were hiding data so we wouldn't be prosecuted. Yep. What do you think should happen with regards to this investigation? What would you like to see?
Well, I think the conduct of Andrew Cuomo's administration is deeply concerning. Number one, they had a policy at the beginning of the COVID pandemic that made very little sense, where they sent COVID positive patients into nursing homes, and it resulted in thousands or even tens of thousands of deaths. And thankfully, most other states didn't follow that policy. And we recognize that people in nursing homes, very elderly people, are among the most vulnerable to COVID, and sending people who are COVID positive into those populations doesn't make any sense. This is a point I've been making for months. In fact, I went on Chris Cuomo's show, which was a bit of a screaming match where he lost his cool and was yelling at me and practically challenged me to a fist fight.
Well, he works out, in case you haven't seen it. He posts lots of videos of himself working out to show that he works out, Senator.
He's very proud of that, but he was very defensive of his brother. And I was making these points on his show, and he wouldn't have anything of it. He just said, it's all a lie. It's not true at all. Well, we now know where the lies are coming from because, as you noted, the Cuomo administration now, his aides have admitted to that they were actively lying about these policies. And so I've called for a Department of Justice investigation because lying to cover up policy mistakes that may have cost thousands or even tens of thousands of lives, that's deadly serious. So, of course, the mainstream media doesn't want to cover it at all. You know, Chris Cuomo wants to play footsie with his brother and have a hug fest because CNN doesn't want to cover news, and nobody else covers it. And it is serious and tragic. And you know, our media should leave the game of politics and being partisans and actually be journalists and cover the news. But at least right now, Donald Trump broke the media, and so they don't want to do that. They just want to engage in political attacks.
Yeah, maybe the media wouldn't have such a problem with their claimed misinformation if they actually informed the public instead of acted as propaganda agents. We appreciate the time, Senator Cruz. We're glad you're okay, and I just want to state for the record that you had someone taking care of your dog, so all the people can stop.
We had Snowflake, had a
ridiculous
dog sitter taking care of him. He had food, he had water. Actually, at the time he was there was also power and lights, and Snowflake was very happy, and I walked Snowflake.
To interrupt, you took better care of your dog than the New York governor took care of elderly residents in nursing homes. I'll say it for you so you don't have to. I'm just making a legitimate media observation as a member of the unbiased and completely honest and not at all partisan media. Senator Ted Cruz, always a pleasure. Good to speak with you, and we'll be watching to see what unfolds in the Senate and with this Cuomo investigation as well. Thanks for your time today.